Good evening, everyone. My name's Sarah Wright. I'm currently a junior studying graphic design and apparel merchandising, and I'm the president for this year's NRFSA.
And I'm Jennifer Junker. I'm a senior in AMD, and I'm the vice president of the NRFSA.
To the Dean of the College of Human Sciences, Dr. Laura Jolly, to Professor and Department Chair, Dr. Yolanda Sanders, to Professor Dr. Linda Neem, and to NRF National Representative Analia Sauji Maurer, attending faculty, staff, and students, welcome to the kickoff event for the National Retail Federation Student Association at Iowa State. Thank you, Karen Katz, former CEO of Neiman Marcus and chair of the NRF Foundation Board, and first vice chair of the NRF Board, for being our special guest tonight. We have had tremendous experiences participating in the National Retail Federation scholarships. I was a semifinalist of the Ray Greenlee Scholarship, and I was able to attend the Los Angeles Shop.org convention and the Big Show in New York City.
And last year I participated in the Student Challenge, which is another NRF scholarship, and through that I gained a lot of confidence, and I also was able to go to the Big Show as well. So from our participations, Sarah and I and our co-founder Tammy, who is studying in Florence right now, all attended the Big Show, and we were able to have incredible experiences that allowed us to network, attend keynote speakers, which Karen Katz was one of them, so it was pretty cool to see it all come back full circle. And we believe that being a part of the NRF is something that can be beneficial to all students.
We would also like to thank the Yvonne Smith Endowed Excellence Fund. This special night is possible because of your sponsorship, and it means so much to us as students to know that we are supported by you. We are grateful for the apparel, events, and hospitality department. We wouldn't have
the experiences we've had without the foresight of our faculty and staff in the department. Dr. Sanders, thank you for leading the charge and giving us the opportunity to found the NRFSA here at Iowa State. Will you say a few words to our members and friends?
Good evening. Oh, good evening. This is an exciting evening. This is a kickoff. It is my pleasure to welcome a full house to the kickoff event for the Iowa State University National Retail Federation Student Association. The mission of the National Retail Federation, also known as NRF, is to advance the interest of the retail industry through advocacy, communications, and education, which aligns very well with the Department of Events, Hospitality Management, and the Apparel, Merchandising, and Design program. So first, I'd like to thank our student leaders, Sarah Wright, Jennifer Junker, and Tammy Melton, who led the effort in establishing the NRF student chapter here at Iowa State University. I would also like to thank our Apparel, Merchandising, and Design Planning Committee, our academic advisors, Chris Weiss, and T, Associate Professor Dr. Ellen McKinney, and Professor Dr. Linda Neem, who also serves as our Program Director for Apparel, Merchandising, and Design. I also thank the Department of Apparel, Events, and Hospitality Management main office staff, who did a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes to put this event on, and especially Tony Jackson Lampley, who assisted the students and the committee in coordinating this event. Tony? Oh, okay. She's at the back there. Thank you, Tony, for everything. Thank you to our special guest, Karen Katz, for your willingness to engage in a discussion about the many dimensions of the retail environment. Thank you to Annalise Sauji Maurer, Coordinator for Scholarships and University Relations. Working with the foundation and with our students really helped to launch this organization, so thank you very much. I also thank the Yvonne Smith Endowed Fund for Excellence in Apparel, Merchandising, and Design. This fund honors Yvonne Smith, a 1968 graduate in textiles and clothing, what we now know as Apparel, Merchandising, and Design. In establishing this fund, the Smith Family Foundation sought to enhance the overall education experience for apparel, merchandising, and design undergraduate students. These funds are to be used to promote collaboration, and collegiality among AMD student populations. To provide additional learning opportunities outside the classroom and recognize student leaders who exhibit great promise and character. So this kickoff event is a perfect way to use these funds, and we thank them very much. So I also want to thank and welcome to the stage a premier scholar and educator in the field of apparel, merchandising, and design, endowed Dean Dr. Laura Jolly. Now, as Dean of the College of Human Sciences, Dr. Jolly is responsible for providing a unique and creative interdisciplinary focus to make the college a national model in human sciences. With more than 30 years of teaching and research experience in higher education, Dean Jolly is a nationally recognized leader and scholar in the field of human sciences. Dean Jolly is an authority on retelling, particularly retelling in rural areas and its effect on economic growth in rural communities. She has conducted extensive research on electronic commerce and theoretical models of merchandising. She has also written and spoken widely on technology and its developments within textiles, clothing, and apparel and merchandising. So welcome, Dean Jolly.
Thank you, Dr. Sanders. And let me add my welcome to all of you. It's marvelous to see a full house for this kickoff event. It's a really special night. I mean, this is the kickoff of the National Retail Federation Student Association at Iowa State University. Our program here is nationally known, and our students are doing great things here, but also all across the retail industry, working in apparel, merchandising and design, and a host of other areas as well. So I want to applaud all of you for the good work that you're doing. So again, it's exciting. You heard about the opportunities that the National Retail Federation provides our students, from scholarships to networking to opportunities to attend the national events such as the Big Show in New York and other ones across the country. And so that's just an invaluable experience for them to have the opportunity to attend those events. Well, one of the highlights of my day today was having the opportunity to spend some time with Karen Katz. We had a marvelous conversation, reminisced about some places we were both familiar with. One of them, Stillwater, Oklahoma, with knowledge of Katz department store, which was there when I was a part of the faculty, on the faculty at Oklahoma State University. But we also had some time to talk about evolution in retailing and all of the different things that are changing, and how the consumer has changed, and how, as students of retailing, you have to stay abreast of how different generations change, how they shop, ranging from technology to the retail environment itself. So it was just a wide-ranging conversation and a wonderful opportunity to get to know her. So we're really thrilled that she's here spending time with us tonight. So Karen, thank you. We appreciate it. Yeah. And now I'd like to invite Analia from the National Retail Federation to come and say a few words about this organization.
Hi everyone, my name is Analea. I am the coordinator for scholarships and university relations at the NRF Foundation. For those of you that don't know, the NRF Foundation is the nonprofit arm of the National Retail Federation, and what we do is we work to build the next generation of retail talent and connect retailers with job seekers all over the country. And obviously a big group of job seekers is college students. So we work with 75 schools across the country, and Iowa State is one of our most involved members, always engaged. So we're really, really excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting us, inviting myself, inviting Karen. It's a great opportunity to be able to meet you guys face to face. As we've mentioned, we have a fantastic student program every year in January in New York City. It's coming up this January the 11th through the 13th, and what it is essentially a 3-day conference where you'll be able to hear from dozens of retail executives from retailers all over the country, all over the world, who are there to engage with you, talk with you, meet with you. We also have a career fair, and the program also gives you access to the Big Show, which is the largest trade conference and expo in the country that brings about 40,000 people together every single year. So it's just a fantastic opportunity to understand the breadth of the retail industry, how many opportunities there are. So we really hope to see you there. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. Those 2 girls over there have my contact information, and I'm always happy to help any students that want to come to our programs or that just have questions about our scholarships. We're here to help you and to serve you. So thank you again for having us, and I hope you enjoy the program tonight. Thank you.
List here. I'm
going to stand here.
Yes, and Karen's going to stand here with me, and then we're going to proceed for our fireside chat this evening. Okay. I'm Dr. Linda Neem, and as Dr. Sanders said, I'm a professor in the Department of Apparel Events and Hospitality Management. I see many of my students here tonight for my entrepreneurship class that I also teach, in addition to retail merchandising. So we're thrilled to have so many students here. I think this is just fantastic that we now, after many years in the making, have a student organization for the National Retail Federation. So we're thrilled with how much interest and enthusiasm the students have shown, the leadership of Sarah and Jenny getting us kicked off, Tammy too, from a distance, as well as our other faculty members who've helped move all of this process along. I would like to thank everyone who's here tonight for coming. I know we're going to have an interesting and stimulating discussion with Karen. And Dean Jolly and Dr. Sanders and Analia, thank you all for all of your support. You've been busy. We've been visiting all over campus and all over town today. So thank you to everyone who has made Karen's visit possible. Okay, at this point, we're going to proceed to the stage here, Karen. So we'll walk up there. Okay. So we're going to do sort of the fireside chat technique. I don't know. I've seen these sort of things like on political commentaries, but we promise not to be so dry, right, tonight.
Well, hopefully we'll be as colorful and interesting.
Yeah.
So.
We will keep things really moving along here. Okay. So Karen has had just really extensive experience in the retail industry and has a really great story to tell. I know that you've heard that she has most recently worked with Neiman Marcus and has top-level executive experience. In fact, she's one of I think it's fair to say, slim number of women who have held such high executive positions within the retail industry. So we really would like to hear your career path. Just really tell us your story, Karen, and some of the experience that you've gained along the way. Help us to understand how you got from point A to where you are today.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, I'm thrilled to be here. I've told the people that I've met today, it's my first trip to Iowa, and I'm just so happy to check another state off my list.
Yeah.
And everybody has been so warm and welcoming, and I don't know where Tony is, but she has been amazing today. So, Tony, thank you. The campus that you all get to live and learn on is just beautiful, and I'm really, really delighted that you all have extended this invitation to me. So thank you very much. So I have a fairly basic story. I went to the University of Texas, and when I was graduating, as I'm sure many of you that are juniors and seniors started to think about what I wanted to do with my life, I was set out to go to law school and ditch that idea after I didn't do very well in an undergraduate constitutional law class. So as I was approaching my senior year, I decided that I was going to apply to 2 MBA programs and 2 retail training programs. And I've told this story before, but it has become somewhat emblematic of my career. So I went to the University of Texas in Austin, and I applied to 2 retail training programs in Texas because that's where I'm originally from and where I live today. I applied to Foley's department store, which is now part of Macy's, but it was a separate department store that was based in Houston. And I applied to the Neiman Marcus training program, which was based in Dallas. And at the same time, I applied to the University of Texas MBA program and to the Harvard Business School program. That spring, I got 2 acceptance letters and 2 rejection letters. I got accepted to the Foley's buyer training program, and I got accepted to the University of Texas MBA program. I got rejected from the Harvard Business School, and I got rejected from the Neiman Marcus buyer training program. So I like to say that success is sweet revenge, and it really does symbolize kind of what my career has been all about. And it's a little bit about overcoming odds to get to where, I landed many years later, but it was kind of an amazing journey, and it was fun almost every day of the year. There were a few days that were fraught with things along the way, but overall it was a really, really terrific career. So I started at Foley's when I graduated from Texas, and while I was working at Foley's, I went and got my MBA at night at the University of Houston. So I kind of was juggling working and school. Worked at Foley's for a number of years, and then 33 years ago, a long time ago, I went to work at Neiman's, and I became a buyer at Foley's, and when I went to work at Neiman's, I started as an assistant store manager and kind of wound my way through the organization and tried to take on as many challenges as were handed to me. I kind of became known as, in one of my positions, as the handbag divisional merchandise manager, so I oversaw all of the handbag buying for all of the Neiman Marcus stores. I had buyers, and at the time, I don't know, have you heard in Iowa of a brand called Prada? Yes, okay, it's just a joke. Well, our team of handbag buyers was actually the first group to introduce Prada to the United States. So we were on a trip to Milan, Italy, and found this product that looked really interesting. It ended up being somewhat ahead of its time when we brought it to the United States, but really took risks like that along the way that kind of helped propel my career. I became a store manager and did a number of things along the way. In 1999, Neiman Marcus launched NeimanMarcus.com, and it was very early on for a department store or a luxury store to launch an e-commerce business. Some of you are too young to remember, but Amazon, just so you know, launched in 1995. So for someone like Neiman Marcus to launch so soon after Amazon, we were very early in our launch of e-commerce. And I, after a number of other things, became the president of what we called our direct-to-consumer business. We had a catalog business, and we had started this very fledgling e-commerce business, and we were really the first to do it. And so I led that business for a few years. I then became the president of all of Neiman Marcus, did that for 9 years, and then became the CEO, and I was the CEO of the corporation for about 8 years. One of the things that I'm probably most proud of is through this transformation, which we're going to talk about, of what retailing has gone through, is that I think Neiman Marcus really led in the luxury space this digital transformation that has gone on that seems so, very practical in what we do every day. But there's a lot of hard work that has gone behind transforming a company to be very digitally enabled. And that's probably, one of the biggest accomplishments of the last, decade at Neiman Marcus, is making sure that the company was digitally enabled. And that's both through e-commerce as well as in our stores. So that's kind of a short capsule, and I'll Turn it back to you, Linda.
Okay, all right, thanks. All right, so that's the Reader's Digest version
Yeah,
of
exactly.
of Karen's career story. So if any of the students are sitting there saying, wow, thinking of all these, a buyer and then a merchandise manager and et cetera, up to CEO. So
Right.
if any of the students have aspirations to have an executive level position, maybe a CEO position, with a retail or fashion company, what types of advice would you give them? I mean, your path was, like you said, some unexpected things, or the sweet revenge. It didn't quite,
Right.
start off the way that you thought. But so things don't always happen in this linear manner,
Yeah.
right? So what advice might you give to the students?
I actually think the way you described it is exactly the right way. I think that if you lined up numbers of different CEOs or senior executives in companies, I think rarely you will find people who have had very linear careers. And I think part of what makes a good senior executive or potentially a CEO is that they have a variety of experiences, whether it's in one company like I had or multiple companies, and that they allow themselves to be flexible in their career so they learn as much as absolutely possible. When the CEO of Neiman Marcus came to me in, at the end of, around 1999, and said, I was running all of our Neiman Marcus stores at the time, and said, we want you to go run the direct-to-consumer business. Well, everybody on the store side of the business thought that was the dark side, that people went to the dark side and they never survived the dark side. And I thought, well, I mean, how dark could it be, right? I mean, and it was pretty dark, but out of that came the light of learning the e-commerce business. And to be one of the few leaders in the retail industry that had led an e-commerce team and understood the foundation of what it took to run an e-commerce business was really, in many ways, career defining for me. So I think that this idea of having a linear career path is not necessarily the one to get to the top. Now, I will say I had many disappointments in my career. There were lots of jobs that I didn't get. I got passed over for any number of jobs along the way, and in some ways that just made me stronger. And as I said, that story of getting rejected by Neiman Marcus at the very beginning, it kind of led to understanding that some of those rejections really made me stronger, made me more self-aware, and I think was better for the journey that I went on.
Okay. All right. So all of those things added kind of a sense of resiliency,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Which really then became a skill, part of your skill set,
Right.
that I'm sure served you well as,
Yes,
as you move
absolutely,
forward.
absolutely.
Okay. Well, you've talked about some of your career experiences, but you're such a real down-to-earth person. And so Karen is a real person with a real life. And so we wanted to ask you, because oftentimes students say, how do I balance, all these things I want to do with my career, my industry, and my personal life? And your position was a pretty high demand, high energy position. So I know there's no crystal ball and no
Yeah.
magic solution, but
Right.
what were some things that helped you to attain a sense of balance?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that being aware that you want to achieve a sense of balance is really important, first off. I think that there's plenty of people who just, they all they want to do is work, or, they make a choice that they want to have a family and be with their family 100% of the time. And I think either path is fine for some people. That wasn't fine for me. And I recognize that at the time, I have a grown son now, but when he was, a little small child, and I was traveling a lot, and I remember thinking that I probably wasn't going to be able to travel and still be a good mother and oh, by the way, sometimes be a good wife, which always kind of came last in the string of things. So at the time I asked, could I get another position within Neiman Marcus where I wouldn't have to travel for a few years? And so I made choices, and those kinds of choices potentially could have derailed my career at some point, but I knew at that time it's what I needed to do. And so I think it's somewhat about making choices. I also think that the idea of doing it all, that, you're going to be the perfect husband or wife and the perfect mother or father, the perfect sibling, the perfect daughter to parents, it's a myth. I just don't think it exists. And I think that anybody who tells you that, they're not living the real world, because I think it's hard to keep all those balls up in the air. You're going to drop a ball along the way. And as much as you want to try to juggle everything, it's really, really hard. And so I think you have to kind of pick your places. I wanted to be a great mother. I wanted to be as good a wife as I could be, and I wanted to really have a great career. And I didn't know at the time what a great career was going to look like, but I worked hard, and kind of led me down the path that I took. But I think everybody has to figure out within themselves what that right combination is, because I think it's a very, very individual in terms of the decisions that we make.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And in terms of decisions, so fairly recently then, you decided to go on to that next leg of your life. So
Right.
maybe you can tell us that would be, that's hard for me to even envision.
Yeah.
And I know at some point everybody has to say, okay, I'm going to shift gears. I'm going
Right.
to do something else for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that full-time job anymore. So how did you make that decision? And then, but you're still very involved. You're telling us about some boards that you're
Right.
on, NRF being one
Right,
of them.
right.
And so how did you arrive at that decision? And then also, how do you continue to give back? Because that seems to me to be very important
Yes,
to you.
absolutely.
I mean, some people, if they retire, say, that's it, I'm done.
Yeah.
See, I'm on the beach,
Right.
whatever they're going to do. But you're choosing to give back in some other ways.
Well, making the decision to retire from a position that was really kind of a crazy good position. I mean, I have traveled the world. I've gone to every glamorous place people would want to go to. I had a front row seat at all of the major fashion shows around the world, and a really amazing job. But I don't know. I think I had a big birthday a year ago, and most of you are too young to understand these milestone birthdays yet. But those of you who are a little closer in age to me can appreciate that you sometimes get to a point in your life that you think, I've done this, and I've done it. I felt really proud of what I'd accomplished, not only individually, but, how the company was positioned. And it felt like the right time to kind of think about what was next. I wanted to be able to retire so that I was still young enough to maybe go do something else or go do some other things. And so the timing just worked out well. And so I retired about 6 months ago from Neiman Marcus. I'm still on the Neiman Marcus group board. And because I was this is the most important thing, because I was with the company for 33 years, I get a lifetime discount. Not saying that was important, but that was important.
Yeah, but it helps a lot.
I mean, so I got to keep dressing well. So anyway, so I'm kind of, I'm still trying to figure out my path in terms of exactly what I'm going to be doing. But I have been very involved as the chairman of the NRF Foundation, and these kinds of programs that we do through the NRF that everybody has spoken about this evening. We're very proud of the work that the NRF has done, and my term comes to an end in January, but I've loved doing that. I'm doing some work for a not-for-profit, the Science Museum in Dallas. But I'm also getting very involved with finding entrepreneurs that I can mentor and be advisors to, trying to find some companies that I can be on the board of directors. I'm on the, has everybody heard of Under Armour? I'm on the board of Under Armour, and that's been super interesting because it's become a big company, and the founder of the company, Kevin Plank, is still the CEO. And so seeing how a founder grows a business to a $5 billion business has been super interesting, and he needs his board and he needs his advisors around him to help him. So I'm finding different ways to get involved in the industry, both from a not-for-profit and also from a for-profit. And so, maybe you'll invite me back in a year and I'll have a much better defined plan 8 months from today.
Okay.
So,
well, you have an open invitation.
Okay,
so
thank you. Thank you.
anytime,
Okay.
yeah, that would be
Not
great.
in the winter.
So, oh, yeah.
Not in the
after,
winter.
after the snow melts.
Yes, not in the
so that's
winter.
when May. No. So, okay. All right. Well, so you mentioned the industry and giving back to the industry and mentoring and that sort of thing. So let's shift gears just a little bit and talk about the retail industry.
Yep.
So retailing is so dynamic and ever-changing. It's one of the things that I find very exciting about the industry. It's customer-focused, so it's reflecting current lifestyles. However, it's also currently experiencing a lot of change, adjustment. I mean, everyone, any media you look at or, look online, you see phrases like the Amazon effect,
Right.
So as we look at the change in retail formats, changing consumer lifestyles, buying behavior, et cetera, we hear phrases like omni-channel retail, where all of these channels converge together into one seamless mega channel. So lots of change has occurred. So related to this whole industry landscape that we're seeing, we have a few questions that we'd like to bounce off of you tonight. So first of all, can you help us put these factors in context and maybe discuss the evolution of retail? I mean, nothing ever stays the same forever, and I think some of this is kind of the natural evolution
Right.
of some tried and true retail formats. Again, some students are too young to remember formats like maybe the Five and Dime store. That's like a relic, right? But that went away, replaced by Dollar Tree.
Dollar
right?
store, exactly,
we
Dollar General.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So if you could maybe help us put these factors into context and just understand why we're seeing this change.
Right. So I think that, just to kind of create a little context further, the way people define retail literally for 100 years or longer was by a store, because that's how people, went shopping. Now, some would say, there was the Sears catalog that came out in 1910 or whenever that was. And yes, I think that was one way that probably rural communities, Dean Jolly, you could probably talk on this for hours, but that's probably the way rural communities kind of shopped. But it was about stores, and I can think about Neiman Marcus. It's been around 111 years. Macy's has been around 125 years. You think about all these retailers, these big kind of mature retailers, it was all about their stores. And then you kind of speed dial up to year 2000, year 2002, 2003, when Amazon was really starting to kind of gear up. And they were a bookseller. Probably you guys don't even remember or knew that they were a bookseller, but that's all they sold initially was books. And so I think that what ended up happening is we went from 100 years of brick and mortar store. We didn't call it brick and mortar because, it was brick and mortar store, to all of a sudden e-commerce was born. And I will tell you, having run an e-commerce business in the early days, none of us expected e-commerce to become what it has become. We thought that if it could be our largest store at Neiman Marcus and do $100 million, we'd be very happy. Today, e-commerce at Neiman Marcus is 35% of the total business and does about $1.5 billion. So we set our sights very, very, very small. So you went from brick and mortar, then e-commerce was there. In between, there was some catalog business done, although most companies didn't do very much true catalog business, but it was kind of in there. And then somewhere about 5 years ago, the escalation and the speed at which this digital transformation took place has been mind-boggling. Just how fast things have changed. And you go back 7 years, nobody was talking about omni-channel. And this idea think of omnichannel as this frictionless way to shop between stores and e-commerce, that you want to look at something, research something online, and you want to go in the store and find the same thing. Or you want to look at it online, reserve it so you can go pick it up in store. Or you want to look at it, feel and touch it in the store, but buy it online because you want it shipped to your house. All of that is what we encompass as omnichannel. Just this idea of frictionless shopping between the channels. All of that has happened in the last 5 years. And what has, continued to escalate those changes are the way data is being used, the way artificial intelligence is being used. How many of you even know when you're interacting with a website, whether you're calling, chatting with a real person, or you're chatting or talking to a chat bot? I mean, all of these things this is 12, 24-month, 36-month kinds of ideas that didn't exist. So the pace of change is moving so quickly after 100 years of doing business in one way. And so when you think about retailing, and I'll talk about kind of the kinds of startups that have taken place over the last few years, but if you think about traditional retailing, if people weren't ready for those kinds of changes and they weren't thinking about those kinds of changes, they just couldn't keep up. And many of those kinds of companies are either gone or will be gone because it's too late for them to try to catch up. It really is. And then the future, which, we can talk about what the future looks like, but it's just crazy, the speed of change. And I think that's what's so exciting about this industry, and what is so overwhelming about the industry is trying to figure out kind of where to place the bets on what's going to be next in terms of all these transformations.
Okay. So, what do you think, besides being really kind of ahead of the curve and, technology enablement and, watching competitors, and doing all of those sorts of things and trying to stay ahead of them, what should retailers do to either adapt and hopefully succeed,
Right.
although some won't? Are there some formats that just are falling out of relevancy, do you think? Is that sort of the evolution too?
Well, I mean,
with consumer lifestyles
yeah,
and
I mean, I
preferences?
do think that, retailers that are stores that haven't figured out yet, and I think there are some, how to engage with their consumers digitally or through social media. I don't know what's going to happen to them, because the idea, we spent a little bit of time talking about this at lunch, this idea of print media. Some of you, how many of you still read magazines, Vogue or Bazaar? A few of you do. But over time, those kinds of ideas, they're not going to be sustainable, because those magazines live on advertising. And if you've noticed over the last 12 months, the size of the magazines is tiny, because you can get all that information, all of that, editorial online now. And so I think there are going to be still more people that will go out of business over time. I think the kinds of things that people have to be focused on and engaged in is, what's kind of around the corner. Will virtual reality be something that retailers should adopt? The voice recognition, like Alexa, what role will she play in the way we shop? Because I think she is going to play a role. Today, you can order your paper towels and toilet paper. Tomorrow, you may want to order your Chanel bag. And I think that you can't count any of those things out of what could be this big formula for what could happen. And so I think that the retailers that will be successful are those that are embracing risk, because it is a risky world we live in. They're embracing the idea of testing and learning constantly, and learning from the things that don't go well. Because you may test Alexa today in terms of voice integration, and she may not work for selling Chanel bags today, but a year from today, you may want to buy your Chanel bag through Alexa, and she's going to hopefully find Neiman Marcus when you're ready to buy your Chanel bag. But I think that it's this constant taking risk, testing and learning, and continuing to not be afraid to innovate. And I was so happy to hear as I was meeting people today and wandering campus that there is such an emphasis on innovation on this campus. And I think it's kind of the only way we all have to live. And it's hard to keep up with all the new technological developments and what's going on in the Silicon Valley when you're in Iowa. But the only way that we can all do it is by making sure that we're embracing innovation in a way that at least we're constantly learning. We may throw out an idea, move on to the next one, and you never know, but I think it's all part of what the retail industry is going through.
Yeah. Right, and we talked about this a bit at lunch today too, related to your comments on addressing change, innovation, et cetera. We talked about the importance of entrepreneurial thinking within larger firms. So I know that my students know that we've talked about it in a lot of different contexts. Sure, you could start up your own business. You alluded to that. But also within firms like Neiman Marcus. So that type of thinking, we wanted to look to career opportunities that build off of these changes. Change, yes, there's a challenge, a negative to it. Who likes change? You have to adjust. However, for every change, there's also an opportunity.
Absolutely.
So focusing on entrepreneurial thinking within these retail contexts is also a valuable skill.
I think that that's so important, and I think that it's there's a lot more of that needed, especially in more mature retail organizations, is that ability to have teams of people who can think about innovation and think about what's around the corner. And that's hard for us. It's easy for us to think, God, Amazon, that was a clever idea. Yeah, sure, he ought to be the richest man in the world. But think about what he was offering up in 1995. Well, half of you weren't born in 1995. But besides that, those of us who were around, it was a crazy idea. And so trying to think around the corner, that's what great entrepreneurs do. Some people are more comfortable in a little more structured environment, but with entrepreneurial ideas. And I think that's a skill set that, I say this all the time. I was telling the folks at lunch, our son is now an entrepreneur. And I'm a big company person. It takes a different DNA to be an entrepreneur. You have to be really a real risk taker to do that. But companies need those inside the company, as well as we need entrepreneurs to come up with interesting business developments. I do think generally in retailing today, we used to think of the business in just a couple of silos. We used to think of those people who wanted to be product people, buyers, merchants, those kinds of people. And then the store people, the people who wanted to interact with customers in our stores. Those two things are still very, very important in retailing. But there's a whole host of other things that we need help with in the industry. We need people who are data scientists, who want to do, data analytics. We need people who are great in supply chain, because the supply chains in most manufacturing and most retailers is just broken. We're not getting product to the end consumer quickly enough. And so just the idea of, revamping supply chains is just, incredibly important. So data analytics, and then of course engineers, computer scientists. I mean, all of that is what, drives and delivers an amazing e-commerce experience. So the kinds of areas that have become the focus for retailers, yes, great product is always needed, because it kind of starts with product and it goes to the service levels that we offer the consumer. But all of these other things have become so critically important in the retailing industry these days.
Okay, all right. So those would be to be considered among this set, thinking broadly about opportunities, career opportunities within retailing. Are there specific examples that you've seen as areas of growth, or it's just waiting to happen for large retail formats, or also how about small retail formats? Because as we see all of this change occur, and some of the big boxes going away and that sort of thing, and consumer mindset changing, and millennials really wanting unique, distinctive product. There are a lot of smaller firms that really are coming into being and filling those niches as well. So.
I think that there's, and Dean Jolly and I talked about this earlier, I think that, I don't want to overly categorize your generation or the generation above you, but I think what the boomers appreciate about how you view the world, and I hope I'm not overstepping what I'm going to say, is that I think that you want the combination of things. You want to have a great shopping experience. You want it to be digitally enabled, but you're happy to go into a store. But you also want to be able to shop with companies that are true to their mission and values, that they have a high, yeah, you're all shaking your head, so at least I learned something along the way. And so I think that the companies that, the new companies of this new age that are coming up that resonate, that are able to, digitally engage with you, potentially have stores. They may be digital natives and not want stores, although most of them are opening stores. There's the Warby Parker story that they were only going to be digital natives, and now I don't know how many, they have 100 stores now. I was visiting with the two young men. How many of you have heard of Allbirds, the shoes Allbirds? Raise of hands. So they're two young men that came up with this shoe that's, kind of one of the hottest shoes around. It's $100. And, their whole ethos about their company is they are so committed to their mission and values, which is about sustainability and comfort and things that are really important. They're important to all of us. I just think your generation is making our generation think more deeply about these kinds of things. And all of those things are important in your life and in our life. And so it's just trying to figure out for more mature companies, how do they think about their mission and values, and how do those mission and values resonate with the next generations of customers?
Okay. All right, thanks. So kind of with this middle set of questions, just kind of rounding that out, if you could encapsulate a skill set or a set of experiences that you would suggest the students try to obtain if they are looking for a career in retailing, what would that look like?
Oh, gosh. Was that on our list?
Well, I kind of reworded it. No.
God, she must give hard tests. So let me see. Well, I would say, generally speaking, there's characteristics you probably need to just lead your life by. I think we all have to have a high degree of flexibility these days because things are changing so quickly that if you're not flexible and adaptable, if that can't be part of who you are, then go and spend some time looking at yourself in the mirror, because I think to be successful these days, I think those are two qualities that are really important. I give my husband a hard time because I'm a half glass full to overflowing kind of person, and he's a little bit of a half glass empty kind of person. I think we're kind of predestined, whether you're half glass empty or half glass full. But if you're half glass empty, you really got to take charge of yourself and make sure that you're thinking about, how can I be flexible and adaptable in this world that we live in? Because I think that that's how people are going to be successful in your life and certainly in your business. I think that really making sure I live by this, that you can look around at people in the outside world, people you may not know, and you think, God, they're the luckiest people in the world. There are some people in life that are lucky, but I really believe if you lined up the people that you think, God, they're so lucky, and you look behind what they've done, there's a lot of hard work behind what they've done. And I am a real believer that if you work hard, good luck will follow. And it's really, you can't depend that, that luck's just going to come your way, or that a silver spoon's going to just appear in your mouth. You're going to have to work hard if you want good things in your life. And I don't just mean monetarily, but if you want to live a good life. And so I think that, you have to kind of find the principles that you want to live by. But in this crazy world that we live in, I think being flexible and being adaptable and working hard, they still matter. And I think it's really important to kind of sit back. I know you're in class all the time, and I'm sure, if you're anything like anybody else I know that's 19, 20, or 21, there's lots of eye rolling going on, but there are actually people around you. We do have some experiences that can help you become better at what you're doing. So hopefully there's no eye rolling tonight.
Yeah. No, and I think those are really great, words of wisdom. I mean, I hear you saying like mindset's really important.
Yeah.
Your perspective's really important. I didn't hear you say you need to take Management 310 or some other.
No, I didn't. Was I supposed to?
No, but I'm just saying there are all these different courses that you could take, and that gives you one skill set. But if you don't have the things you're mentioning, you may not be as effective.
Yeah.
So,
I just kind of one more story to add on to that. When I was at Neiman's, I'd have, our assistant buyers or, kind of the next level up, our planners, they'd want to come and talk to me about career advice. And many people get into the fashion industry because they want to, or they come to work at Neiman Marcus because they want to be a designer apparel buyer, and they want to be a couture buyer. They want to go to Paris all the time, and and it's all. I mean, there's some element of it that's glamorous, but what I try to make sure that people who came to me with a very defined set of things they wanted to do in their career, I said, the broader you can make your experience, and this is kind of where we started in terms of how to achieve a senior level in an organization, the broader your experience, the better off you're going to be. And I'll repeat that again, that the more ideas you have in your head, the more you can get your point of view based on a variety of experiences, the better off you're going to be. And so maybe you should take Management 301, 103. But maybe you should also take that, entrepreneur class just to see what it's like. And you may never want to be an entrepreneur, but just to understand how people who are entrepreneurs think will give you a better perspective on, working with those kinds of people potentially at some point in your life.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so we're going to now segue into our final section of questions here that you and I kind of mapped out in advance. So not necessarily word for word. I'm not just a word for word person, but okay. But you've spent a number of years with Neiman Marcus, which is a luxury goods retail department store. So looking at all the changes in the department store sector, if we could maybe look specifically now at the luxury goods market. So where do you see luxury goods going and opportunities for this category, both in the U.S. as well as globally?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question. And obviously, I've spent most of my life in luxury goods, and it's a very, specific market. It's not that we're not buying product and selling goods to consumers, but it has specific characteristics about it because the customers that luxury companies focus on are very affluent consumers, and there will probably always be affluent consumers that are going to want and desire, because the affluent consumers really don't need much in their life. It's all about desire. They're probably going to always desire beautiful things in their life. And whether they consider a Chanel handbag or a diamond ring or a Mercedes, whatever of those luxury goods, or, a trip to, some beautiful part of the world, it's all about, kind of creating desire and emotion for those kinds of people. So I believe that as long as I'm around, there'll be luxury goods. There will be a big luxury goods industry on a worldwide basis. I do think the luxury goods industry is changing, though, and I think it's adapting to its customers. I think it's adapting to the fact that it is a worldwide business, that the Chinese consumer is as important as the American consumer, and that although there may be different lifestyles buying luxury goods in China versus in, L.A., the fact of the matter is it's all about, these desires and emotions. But things come in and out of style. And if you dial back a few years ago, one of the most important categories in luxury were furs. And, the most expensive furs were made from, pelts in Russia, and I could go on and on about this category. Well, this category is virtually dead today. And it's dead today because there's been this undercurrent that the farming of the animals to make the furs is, what's the word that I'm looking?
Inhumane.
Inhumane, thank you. And so the fur industry is dying a very quick death. That was a hallmark for many, many decades of luxury customers, and it's basically going away. And many stores have stopped selling furs at this point. And on the other hand, a category that's just crazy that it is the category it has become is the sneaker category. And the world, and I mean the world, cannot get enough uber expensive sneakers. And I don't know how many of you follow this brand Supreme. Do you know this? Well, I mean, you can't get these sneakers, and if you get them and you want to resell them, you can resell them for thousands and thousands of dollars. But that's just one small part. There are sneaker companies around the world that are producing sneakers for thousands of dollars. And so I think those are the kinds of changes luxury goods are going through. Luxury goods are probably going to always be in demand, but the type of luxury goods I think will change as life changes. And so, furs on one hand is, one example, sneakers on the other hand. I think people are demanding more goods, luxury goods that are made with an eye towards sustainability. And there's an organization, there's a company based in Paris called Kering, K-E-R-I-N-G. They own Gucci and Saint Laurent, Bottega. Their whole ethos now, their whole mission is to be a beautiful luxury goods company, but making their goods in a very sustainable way. So I think that there's all these trends that, intersect luxury that make it kind of continue to move forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Karen. I think this has just been fascinating. I could talk to you all night.
Yeah,
No, we don't
thank
have
you.
all night, though.
You were a great moderator, so thank you, Linda.
Well, thank you. Okay. We're going to now open the floor up, and Sarah and Jenny are going to help with the microphone. So I know there are many students that probably have burning questions that they would like to ask Karen and maybe extend on some of the topics we've talked about tonight, or if you have your own notes that you've taken. So we'll stand ready with microphones. So we'll take questions. So raise your hand, and then are you going to take the mic around? Yeah. Jenny, is that what you'll do? Okay. All right.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. Student questions. Well, faculty too. Dr. Hurst, go for it.
So while everyone's thinking of your questions,
Thank you.
as a faculty, I just thought, so teaching this next generation, one of the things that we try to instill in our students is how important it is to be scholars of the industry and what's going on in the industry. And so could you just share with our students maybe just a couple pieces of advice on how to best do that? Because obviously we know our students are in class and they're working and we're all crazy busy.
Right.
And so could you give them some advice on how to manage their time but yet be resourceful and become scholars of the industry so they do know a lot of these trends that you're talking about, so when they go into interviews, they're talking with recruiters and executives in a knowledgeable way?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question. I think that today it's kind of easier than ever to learn about an industry because, it's just they're clicks away. I do think, depending upon kind of what part of an industry you want to get into, whether it's retail or fashion or frankly any industry, it's finding people who have good industry blogs. That's different than following the handbag snob. That's a blog. I mean, she writes a blog on handbags. I wouldn't suggest following that. I mean, you can, but finding industry blogs that kind of talk about whatever industry you're interested in, and you just go Google, retail blogs, or there's lots of people that are writing about all of these industries, and really try to follow a few of them. I think you almost have to sign up for more and then kind of then edit through because you'll figure out the ones you like. If you really are interested in retailing, go shopping. I mean, like, how much more fun than go visit, when you're traveling, go visit new stores. Again, everything's a click away. Go, if you haven't ever heard of Allbirds, go look at their website because they have, they've developed this brand around this brand ethos and this iconography that's super interesting. And so as names come up, as you're reading things, go Google things, be curious about it. And I think that really helps. I would also say if there's kinds of companies that you think you want to go work for, go do research on those companies and ask everybody do you know somebody who works in such and such place? Now, you may come up, with a dry hole, but my bet is you'll find somebody that can introduce you to somebody so that you can at least get a sense, is it really true that this is the way they work at that company? And there's so much information on the internet these days. It's just, you should never walk into a company and interview without having really done great research on things. I know how busy everybody is, but watch one less Netflix movie and show, and I promise you'll have time to do research because I know how addictive it is.
Okay.
Is that good?
Okay. Yeah. I don't know who.
That was another professor at the back clapping.
Is that who it was? The lone clapping. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Oh, was that one?
The students were shaking their heads.
Yeah.
So,
I think there's a question over here. You want to stand up, please?
Hello. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Yep, thank you.
So I'm actually a design rather than merchandising focus, and so some of the stuff kind of went over my head because I don't really know too much about retailing.
Okay.
I know there is a lot of design students in the audience
Yes.
tonight as well. What kind of advice would you give to someone who does want to just do more design work rather than retailing? 'Cause
Yeah.
it's always good to have a little bit of both, but I'm not really sure where to start.
Yeah, no, first of all, I think it's a really good question. Let me start with kind of what you said first, that as a design student, if you're really interested in trying to kind of make a career out of design, you have to understand the business side of things. I've met so many young designers who were crazy talented, but they didn't know how to actually think about the business that they wanted to get into. So, you may not learn the math of it or how the business, but learn enough that you won't make those kinds of mistakes. Find a friend who can help you think about those things differently. So I'm a huge believer that the creative side of the business in general, of retail, is so important. And I think that good design is hard to find. And my best advice is to keep doing what you're doing, seek out as many thoughts and ideas around how you envision what design is so that you can understand how different industries think about design. I met a young woman a few years ago who said she was a product designer. And I said, oh, well, what do you design? Because, of course, from my paradigm, I assume she's designing a shoe or a bag or, a dress. And she was a product designer for Volkswagen. And she was as proud of the work she was doing for Volkswagen, and it was some very special, I don't know if it was the dashboard or something, as, I don't know what kind of designer you are, but as a dress designer that I've met along the way. And so I think seeking out how other ideas and designs, how people think about formulating those ideas are really, really important. The other thing the other advice I would give is to get a real job designing. And this is one of the things I've learned in my 6 months in retirement. I've met so many, in my life, my career, I've met a lot of designers, but recently I've met a lot of young designers who wanted to just start a business, and they wanted to know how can they sell their dresses to Neiman Marcus or Saks or Nordstrom's or anybody. And the fact of the matter is they would have learned so much, not to give up their dream, because I'm not about giving up your dream. Go get some real practical experience being a designer, because I think you will learn so much about how design actually integrates into a business. And if one day you still want to start your own business and do those kinds of things, at least you've been in a little bit larger womb to understand how design connects with something greater than that. So I think that some of the I've met all kinds of designers in my life. I mean, in my industry of fashion design, and I can I could tell you a dozen stories of true success, and I could tell you a dozen stories of complete failures. And most of the complete failures were around that they sat in their little box and they didn't really understand kind of who they were designing for, how to really be a true designer. And I think that's so important as you're thinking about kind of your design, your life in design, because it can be lonely if you don't seek out other people. Really good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, other questions? I think I saw, is there a hand in the middle there?
Hi, thanks again for coming.
Sure.
So you said you were like optimistic, positive, cup half full, overflowing. I was just wondering, throughout your career in retail, has there been something that's been like a continual frustration, and how, as you've grown in your career, how you've worked to make that better for yourself and those it may be affecting too?
That the men always got paid more than I did? Well, I tried to take care of that when I got to the top to make sure No, that really wasn't a frustration. I mean, it was a frustration, don't get me wrong, but, I don't know that there were any, huge frustrations. I think that, I had to learn to be very self-aware as I, kind of grew up in the organization, because I could be very, very demanding of the people around me. I mean, I think, I was always kind of a fair, I guess people would describe me as a fair but tough supervisor, and I didn't mind being tough if I was fair, but maybe I, had to learn sometimes not to be quite so tough on people. So I don't know that that was a frustration of mine. It may have been a frustration of the people who work for me, but I mean, I do think that, as you grow older and a little bit wiser and you manage your way through, an organization like I did, I think self-awareness is really, really important. And I think it's kind of hard when you're, 20, 21, 22 to be as self-aware but try to think about that. I will say for sure, the one thing that I admire about all of you, because if I had the opportunity to talk to each of you, I know that you are many more times self-confident than I was when I was your age. I was a very, very insecure young woman. And so, I had to work really hard to overcome that. And now I'm obviously very confident most of the time. But it was never a frustration of mine, but it definitely was with me. It kind of followed me. So, but it's a good question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Other questions? Yep, in the middle over here.
I'm just curious of where you see Neiman Marcus going in the next few years. We talk about how unpredictable the retail environment is, especially with department stores
Right.
and Bonton going down recently. And how do you see Neiman Marcus reacting right now? You said they were really on top of e-commerce 5 years ago, and
Yeah.
what are they doing now to react to that?
Yeah, no, I think it's such a good question, and I'm hoping that I've left the company in a fairly good situation with the new CEO. But I mean, I do think that the company's the one place I think the company has big opportunities is by trying to make this enormous e-commerce business feel much more personal, and I think that if for those of you who've had an experience in a Neiman Marcus store, it's a very personalized experience. Our sales associates are all educated and trained to give very personalized service. So it's not about just selling a blouse. It's about developing a relationship, getting to know you. So we sell you that blouse, but in fact, we really get to know you so we understand what your lifestyle is and you'll come back. On the website, which is a big business, over 35% of the business, it's very transactional. Now it has the same product as in the stores, and so it's got everything beautiful and luxurious, but there's no real element of kind of developing that relationship. And so a year ago, as I was kind of contemplating retiring, we started this test to try to figure out if we could have personal shoppers, if you will, online, combined with chat bots, bots to help answer incoming customer questions, so that it felt like you were really starting to develop a relationship with people. It sounds like, obviously I keep in touch with the company because I'm on the board. It sounds like that's gaining some traction, but that feels like it's a really big opportunity to try to figure that out, especially as that e-commerce business gets bigger and bigger. Because the idea of very personalized relationships is what Neiman Marcus has been about for 111 years, but if 35% of the business is very transactional, there's a disconnect. And so I think that's one of the single biggest opportunities.
Okay. All right. Sarah, and is there anyone else? Jenny? Anybody else that we have questions? Other students? Yeah, in the middle. That's fine. But this middle, you guys are burning up all the questions tonight. That's great.
Hi, thank you for coming tonight. And I was going to ask you, so for being in the industry for so many years, where do you get your inspiration and creative and innovative ideas that you tell us that we need to kind of keep focusing on?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question. Well, over time I've become an avid traveler, and I highly recommend when and where you can to get on the road, and that doesn't mean you have to go to Paris or Milan or China. I think it's just getting out on the road and discovering new places, and when you're in those new places, discovering different places to eat food, different little stores, and having that high level of curiosity wherever you go, and when you're with people you don't know. People love to talk about themselves. I love to talk about myself. Ask questions about what they do, who they are, where they came from. Be curious, because I think a curious life, you will become a more worldly person through that. I think that's really important. I visited I forget the name of it, the museum on campus, the Tea Museum? TC Museum.
Yeah.
If you all have not spent any time there, go spend time there. It is amazing what is in the libraries. It's crazy. I could have spent days there looking at it. There's going to be an exhibit, I guess in the next few weeks, it's going to go up about mid-century fashion. Go look at it. It is, I kind of saw, it was like a fashion show lineup. It's amazing what's there. So be curious. There's I'm sure I only saw this much of the campus today. There must be so many amazing things on this campus. Be curious. Go discover. Don't stay in your box. Don't go out. You're not supposed to be drinking anyway. Don't go out drinking. Go discover something new, because I think that's the way you become a more worldly and world-connected kind of citizen, and I think it's really, really important. And then, of course, through the internet, which we all do, stop watching Netflix all the time. I'm a real mother. My son doesn't watch Netflix, so I can say that.
Okay, we have time for one more question right here. I don't think there are other hands up. Or were there two?
I guess
You're
she's
good.
waiting
Okay.
for the
All right.
microphone.
You're our
Hi.
final question.
Thank you for coming again.
Sure.
What are your tips on being a good leader?
I think that's such an important question. And, I do think being a good listener is really, really important. Being empathetic to people and the different places they come from and their different motivations. But I believe the most important thing about being a good leader is having a vision and communicating that vision, and being willing to talk to everybody who will, is open to being, communicated with about your vision. Because to truly get things accomplished, that's what it's all about. And whether it's if you're in a sorority and you have a leadership position in your sorority and you're the fundraising chair. I'm making all this up. I haven't been in a sorority in a long time. And you're the fundraising chair, and you have a vision of something you want to get done to raise money. What's the best way you're going to be successful? By getting how many people are in a sorority? All 50 people, 150 people in that sorority to come to that fundraising and bring all their friends and have great ideas so that you and the sorority will be successful. But it's really about that communication of what your vision is for that fundraising. And, it ends up that as you're communicating to people like that it ends up bringing empathy to the surface, because you get to know people and you get to know their stories and where they come from and what motivates them. And by knowing those things, you can be a more empathetic leader. And I think it's really, really important. Great
Thank
question.
you so much.
Okay, all right. So, Karen, we'd like to thank you just so much for spending time with us today. This was fabulous. I mean, why don't we give Karen a round of applause? Thank you. Great. So we hope that you'll not be a stranger and you'll come back again very soon. Very good, very soon to see us. And I'd also like to thank Analia for coming in regard to the National Retail Federation. We're thrilled to now have a student organization. We've been, attending various events for years. Now we're an official student organization here at Iowa State. I'd like to thank the students for such great questions tonight.
Yes,
I think the attendance was fabulous, and you really had very thoughtful questions for us. So I know that some of you have sheets, a little logistics here, some sheets that you need to sign on the way out. So where are those, Kennedy? Okay, Kennedy has them. The clipboard's back there.
Do you get class credit? Is that what the sheets are? Oh, that's
some
great.
do. So, but
I'm helping the cause.
But Kennedy, you'd like them to go out in the hallway, please. Okay. And then also, National Retail Federation student organization members, we'd like to get a nice picture with Karen with our Iowa State sign, Go Cyclones. Okay, so we're going to do that before everybody takes off. So if you belong to the student organization, or if you're even interested in the student organization, Jenny, and would like to know more, Jenny and Sarah will be here, and they'd be happy to share a bit of information with you about that as well. So if the student organization kind of, hang out up front, then we'll find a good photo opportunity for us. And there are also refreshments in the back of the room. So please help yourselves. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all very much.
Okay.